Happy Sunday morning to everybody. The Football Scoop podcast is back after an exhilarating week 4. It was an incredible finish. USC, Oregon State. Not one of us got to see because Pac-12 Network. It was a great day, though. Kansas dominates the world of college football. A couple of games went as planned. A couple of things went off the rails. One team hung 98, should have scored 100. Arkansas was going to beat A&M. Then they didn't. It was everything we expect out of college football week 4. Gentlemen, it's great to have you. Scott Roussel with college football experts John Brice, Zach Barnett. Gentlemen, before we dive into the games, give me a quick recap of how happy you were watching college football yesterday.
I thought by far this was the best weekend of the season. I thought it was everything. I was celebrating different games throughout the day. I thought this was one of the better weekends of college football. Maybe in the last 2 or 3 years, I felt like.
Awesome.
I don't know about that. I mean, it was good. I would need a full accounting of that. It was. I would say it was. It was good. I wouldn't go to great, but any weekend of college football is good. It's just the magic of this sport is. And I know we're going to talk about it more in the Arkansas A&M game, is you've got these guys whose skill level is so high, but their maturity, I mean, they're 18 to 22-year-olds, so anything can happen, and we saw just about anything yesterday.
I just think like even bad games had high theater, such as Auburn, Missouri, and then you had great games have high theater, such as Clemson, Wake Forest, and Arkansas, Texas A&M. I just thought it was a really, really good especially a really good Saturday of college football. And even Friday night, Virginia-Syracuse was competitive.
John Brice was absolutely correct. Zach, just things went weird in Lubbock, and that just changed his outlook on the day. But that's okay. That's what college football is all about. It was amazing. All right, I want to get some thoughts. I'm going to walk us through the top 25, get some feedback real quick. Kent State is a good football team. They played better than people thought at Georgia, and that's a good thing. Alabama, Vanderbilt happened, as did Ohio State, Wisconsin. I don't know if you guys saw the stat. I can't remember it exactly. Did I see that Ohio State's quarterback has thrown for 5+ touchdowns in each of the last 8 games? 6 games? Something unbelievable.
Maybe in Big Ten play. Remember, they only had 21 points in a win against Notre Dame to open this season. So that must be like a Big Ten stat.
Could be.
Yeah. I mean, that offense is just insane, and we're probably going to have to get to January before we see anybody slow it down in any meaningful measure. Like, I think it was Albert Breer tweeted out there that Ohio State's 4th best wide receiver is the Big Ten's 4th best wide receiver, and I can't disagree with that.
All right, so let's transition to Michigan. Michigan played a good football game. Maryland went up there, had everything, put it on the line. It was a good football game. Michigan won, as their school.
Yeah. I mean, Michigan, was coasting on maybe one of the softest non-conference schedules in college football. There's no doubt about that. And got punched in the mouth a little bit and then responded. Like, it's a theme we saw, through in so many different games is like, all right, we're into conference play. We're starting the meat of college football schedule, and it's not going to be easy for a lot of these teams. Like, I think a lot of people went out there and, expected or were disappointed that Michigan didn't roll over Maryland. And I mean, they were 16-point favorites, didn't cover, but we're in the part of the schedule where any win is a good win. And so for Michigan to go out and strain and still get a win, I thought reflected positively on them.
Well, and Blake Corum was an absolute man in that game. I mean, he ran all over the Terps, but I still thought that Loxley's squad looked really good. I was really impressed with Maryland. They held a lead for a fair amount of time, and they never bowed when in other instances in previous years maybe they would have folded up. So I was really impressed with Maryland, and kudos to Michigan for getting the job done.
Wake Forest and Clemson was everything you kind of hope that game would be. I will point out there were a couple of outstanding mustaches. I almost proclaimed yesterday 2022 is the year of the stash in college football. I saw them all over the place once again. It got me excited. Sam Hartman can throw the football. Some of his passes and DJ's as well were just they were where no one else could possibly touch them or catch them, and his guy had to make a great catch, and his guys did. It was fantastic. It was great football.
What about Will Shipley's 2-point conversion run? That we don't get a 2 overtime game without Will Shipley's 2-point conversion run, and it was just absolutely sheer force of will. I mean, they had him. The Wake Forest linebacker had him at about the 1.5-yard line, and Shipley just kept his legs driving and just did extend the ball across the goal. And then Wake Forest takes the lead back with a medium range field goal, and Clemson ties it with a 52-yard field goal that, I'm sure looked like one of Zach's pitching wedges, just split the middle, did exactly what he wanted it to do.
Yeah, I mean, the two quarterbacks threw the ball 70 times for 708 yards, 11 touchdowns, no interception. So obviously not a banner day for defense, but it was really fun to go out and watch, DJ and Sam Hartman go throw for throw. And I mean, Clemson came in yesterday 63rd in the nation in yards per play. They're in the mid 50s offense, but they go out there and they were just as good, better than Wake Forest, who we all think is, top 15 offense in this sport. It just shows the DNA of Clemson is that they're going to do what it takes to get a win any given Saturday. And they've now got the longest active winning streak in college football. And obviously they've got a big game coming with NC State on Saturday. But, the path for them to return to the playoff, even without, a vintage Clemson offense is right there in front of them. I mean, this is still a team that does what it needs to do on any given Saturday to get the W. Like if they, if it's a 17-14 game against NC State, which it very well might be, they've got the DNA, they can go win one of those games as well. Like, I'm just very impressed with Clemson to win when it's not, a vintage Clemson team.
I'll make an observation, and then I'll contradict myself immediately thereafter. I felt watching the Clemson game that I felt like I was seeing them not have Brent Venables, because I feel like Brent Venables would make really good adjustments third, fourth quarter. I felt I saw that at Clemson. I also watched Kansas State have an answer for whatever adjustments Brent Venables was making on defense, because, oh boy, couldn't be stopped at quarterback for Kansas State. And that was fun watching Adrian Martinez do that. He had you could just see the joy in his heart just coming out. It was fun to watch that happen. And as Zach said in Nuggets, Kansas owns college football, the great state of.
Yeah, it had to be super cathartic for him because he was in that very same stadium last year wearing Nebraska red, and he had a really good game that day, but just wasn't enough to win. And then obviously Oklahoma just destroyed Nebraska last week without him. And then he goes back to Oklahoma and gets the win and plays an outstanding game. That 3rd and 16 scramble, Brent Venables said they had a spy on him, and just it was just a bust, some missed tackles, and it was just a backbreaker. Like, you could see the air just leave the stadium after that. Like, first corralling Adrian Martinez and Deuce Vaughn is going to be hell.
Yeah. And
I'll say on that 3rd and 16
this season, we're the better team.
The quarterback IQ, I think you're talking about 3rd and 16, where he went up the middle and broke left and went down the sidelines, and then had the QB IQ, although it didn't work, to try to get down in bounds. I thought that was fantastic.
And I tweeted this.
He's like a 19th year senior, so you expect to plays out of guys like that.
Yeah, exactly. I tweeted this last night. He's been around the game long enough that he committed to Tennessee and Butch Jones in the spring of 2017, when Butch Jones and the Vols were coming off back-to-back 9-win seasons. And then Butch Jones gets fired. He ends up at Nebraska. He languishes through all of that, and then has a moment like that in his career to win at the number 6 team in the country and one of college football's blue bloods. Just a really, really awesome college football story for Adrian Martinez.
I'm trying to imagine Adrian Martinez trying to explain his college career to people. Whoo, the people he's met, the places he has seen.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, SC got a win. Weren't always winning that game. They fought back. They scored the go-ahead in the 4th quarter, then went back and forth, and they scored late to win it. None of us saw it. Thank you, Pac-12. Anyway, any observations from that one?
Yeah, I think Oregon State is probably – I thought Oregon State was good. You guys know that I've talked about them a fair amount through the first month of the season, but a little bit better than I thought, and better defensively. I don't know that any of us believed USC would be held to 17 points in that game. And certainly if you'd told me going in USC would be fortunate to score 17 points, I would have expected it to be an Oregon State victory. So kudos to USC for finding a way to win an ugly game. They had not had to do that yet. But Oregon State's a little better than I thought. God bless you.
Yeah, I agree with. I think again, credit. One of my themes of the weekend is that you go out there when you're not playing your best and on the road in a hostile environment in conference play and get a win. Caleb Williams probably played the worst game of his career, but USC's defense continues to turn people over, and it might be trouble for them when that stops happening. But as long as it does, they're going to be an incredibly hard team to beat because they proved even when Caleb Williams has an extremely off night, they can still get a win.
So I saw a couple of local tweets out of Oregon State world, out of Corvallis, saying that Oregon State rushed for nearly 5 yards per carry, passed for 5 yards per pass. Really played well, except for I think they had 4 picks. They threw 4 picks, and what I saw was they were poorly thrown balls rather than incredible defensive scheme, so to speak. So maybe Oregon State beat itself, but once again, no one will ever know because no one got to see it. It's a thing, gentlemen. All right, I did not get to see Kentucky, Northern Illinois. I saw they were up pretty well, and then it looked like kind of they hung on a little bit at the end or something. JB, did you get any feel?
Yeah, I did follow that game fairly closely. It was tied, I think, 14-14 at the half. And then Kentucky took a 31-14 lead and finally created some separation. But Northern Illinois added a field goal on late to make it 31-17, then scored a touchdown with a little over a minute left and was kicking an onside kick with a chance to recover it and hope for a miracle in a crazy weekend of college football. Didn't happen. Credit to Kentucky for finding a way to win. They need Chris Rodriguez back sooner rather than later. And for the Wildcats, that happens next weekend. That, to me, will know a lot more about Kentucky after we see how much impact he has on their ground game. Because right now it's Will Levis having to carry it all. And as good as he is, that's a tall ask.
Arkansas A&M was everything we all, and I mean the country, hoped Arkansas A&M would be. It was ridiculousness. It was redonkulousness. It was redonkulous.
Yeah.
Give me some thoughts there.
Yeah. That KJ Jefferson play, that's going to be a play both teams point back to and say, this was it. I mean, and you go back, there was like 3 minutes left in the half. Like, it's not like it was like 5 seconds, and it was first down. Yeah. It was first down. And obviously, young man just trying to make a play for his team. But, dude, it is first down. We've been running all over these guys, and we got second down, third down, and maybe fourth down. Like, it's not there. Just live to fight another play and try to make a play, and the worst possible thing happened. 13-point swing that you can't erase. And then, and then obviously led to the doink that we could, I don't think anyone's ever seen a play like that. We could all watch college football another 100 years and never see that happen again. And I mean, A&M's offense was just good enough. They figured, hey, if we get the ball to Devin A-Chain and Anais Smith and often enough and throw it up one-on-one, things will work out more than they don't for us. Like, we've got good players. Let's just make it simple. And it worked out for them good enough. And Lady Luck was on their side with that doink.
Yeah, wasn't that Aggies defensive score one of 2 Banana Land 98-yard touchdowns we saw yesterday in college football? If I'm not mistaken, it was. And even with that, to your point, we still saw Arkansas with a chance to win the game at the end, as you alluded to, the absolutely most bizarre of missed field goals. However, I would take issue with Arkansas not trying to do a little bit more to get even closer, the same as I would take issue, even though it wasn't a top 25 game, with the way Eli Drinkwitz and Missouri managed the late game against Auburn. I don't I don't understand. Your whole goal in college football is to score touchdowns. And I don't know of a coach who says, I'll sleep good every night this week if I know I'm relying on my kicker. I don't know of a one. So why do you get in that situation and stop trying to score touchdowns? It drives me nuts.
Well, in their defense, so Arkansas had a 2nd and 5 at the A&M 16, and then had that errant snap, and then all of a sudden it's 3rd and 14. And I guess at that point, Sam Pittman's probably just playing the percentages like, we're probably not going to pick up this 4th. There's a greater chance of something really bad happening, a sack, a tip ball, than us sitting here and throwing for 15 yards on this 3rd down. So let's just wind the clock down. At that point, I think it was defensible. Obviously, the errant snap on 2nd down completely changed the mathematics in that end of game situation.
Yeah, just as it did last week in the Southern Florida game in the Swamp. They had back-to-back really bad snaps that allowed Florida to escape with a win. But they did have 1st and 10 there. And again, I just think you truly go for the end zone, go for the jugular, so to speak, especially against an A&M offense that we still haven't seen be able to consistently move up and down the field on anyone. Just my opinion.
Say what you will about Max Johnson, the dude wins. Just saying.
Yeah, I mean, they're 2-0 with him. And I mean, at this point, the App State loss, obviously it's going to hang around. It's going to follow them the rest of the year. But, I mean, it's not, at this point, I would say an albatross hanging around their neck. Moved on with 2 straight, at the time, top 25 wins. They're 1-0 in conference play, and they're still going to be a tough out for anybody.
Moving on. The Vols and the Gators.
Man,
I'm telling you guys, I love Tennessee's offense. I've been riding Tennessee a good bit this season, plan to keep doing that. I think their offense is really hard to scheme against and just to run against. They move fast. Their defense needs some shoring up, and I'm not sure how they do that. But Tennessee's a fun football team to watch.
Yeah, and the Vols secondary is, I thought, one of the more troubling things for Tennessee coming out of that game yesterday, because Anthony Richardson had not been known for his passing prowess. And as good a game as he had against the Vols, he missed a whole bunch of open receivers. But I think, and Willie Martinez will get that right. I mean, he's one of the best secondary coaches, I think, in college football. But to me, what stood out about that game, you had Billy Napier, first year, Josh Heupel, second-year coach. I thought it was just an incredibly well-coached game on both sidelines, on both sides of the field. I thought that Florida did some amazing things when they're 4th and 2 in Tennessee territory, and Billy dials up a takeoff route and trusts Anthony Richardson to complete a 40-yard pass downfield on 4th and 2. There was another instance earlier in the game where I thought that the Gators would go for basically the certain points on 4th and 2 or 4th and 3, and they pick it up. And then they did some neat things, almost like an old-style college offense, running Anthony Richardson around the end with a full catter of blockers. So I'm really impressed, but a lot to be impressed about for Tennessee. They really bottled up the Florida run game for most of the day. And even though Florida had a great edge in time of possession, Tennessee got all the possessions it needed, rang up 38 points, exactly the same number of points Tennessee had 6 years ago in its last win against the Florida Gators.
Yeah, speaking of Tennessee's defensive backs, I feel like there were 3 times in the game where Florida, I guess somebody ran the wrong route, but you had 2 Florida receivers, like literally almost shoulder to shoulder, and they were both wide open. And they caught the ball every time and got the first down. And you're like, he had 2 guys standing there. How is there not a Vol defender anywhere near them? Okay.
Yeah, they're open. The Vols are open next weekend, Scott, which means you're going to have a top 10 Tennessee team invading Death Valley in 2 weeks for what will be a really compelling contest.
That should be a lot of fun, to be honest. So LSU's traveling to Auburn. An interesting side note there is there's the potential of a significant weather event coming through there right around then. There's a hurricane type action forming that's projected to be right in that area right then. So could make for a really weird Saturday at Auburn. Otherwise, that next weekend is Tennessee here in Baton Rouge. I'll be there. It'll be raucous.
I've got a bunch of friends headed that way, Scott. I'll tell them to look you up. Find your tailgate.
We should have a lot of fun. We will have a lot of fun. I can assure you.
Yeah.
My tailgate that day is an awesome tailgate. It is. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. It's a big boy. UConn played NC State. We're not going to talk about that. Utah, Arizona State. Again, I'm not talking about that one either. Central Michigan, Penn State. Penn State handled their business. Good stuff. Okay, Oregon, Washington State. John Brice referenced, I think there were two, 98, 97 yarders. I think one you're not even referencing was this Bo Nix pick six that I'm not sure who he was throwing to. Well, he was throwing to the running back coming out, but the middle linebacker who swooped all the way over, who made this pick six, was awesome. That was fantastic. I don't know if you guys got to see that. It was an atrocious throw. It was a fantastic defensive football play. Good football game, honestly. Enjoyable football game.
Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, Bo Nix threw for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns in the second half of the fourth quarter. So great job by him, by Oregon to rally. It was obviously they were down 12 late, and came back and took the lead and really one going away if not for that late Washington State score. So I think a lot of people had Oregon on upset watch. I picked Washington State to win that game and to go on the road against the previously unbeaten conference play. I've got Oregon, right around my top 10 personally. Like since the Georgia game, which you got to grade that one on a curve, they've been really, really good. To beat BYU and then go at Washington State is two of the top back-to-back wins anybody has this season, I think.
Yeah, and much like Adrian Martinez, I think as a college football fan, you're happy for Nix in that situation because of all that his career has entailed and because of all the winding roads that he's been on, obviously at Auburn prior to arriving at Oregon and reuniting with some of his coaches there. So just really an impressive win for Oregon. I saw the highlight of that pick six, Scott, and I think it was in our podcast on Friday where Zach said that he thought Nix would have an interception that really turned the game around. It could have been the case, but Oregon steadied itself and found a way to win in spite of that.
So a couple of years back, so Bo Nix was playing at LSU and had that game, right? The game where Bo Nix beat LSU. Absolutely fantastic. Auburn had given me, I live in Baton Rouge and, frequently have fine seats in Tiger Stadium. Auburn, for whatever reason, had given me tickets with their coaching staff. And to watch that with them was just with their families it was a moment. So I like to cheer for the kid. The kid's obviously he's got all heart. Showed it again. I think he's a lot of what college football in current day is.
Yep.
Ole Miss got a win. Hard fought. Tulsa, you never really know what you're getting with Tulsa, but Tulsa came to work and Ole Miss fought it out.
Yeah, Ole Miss was up 35-14. You think maybe they're in complete control and that Tulsa is going to dissolve a little bit because we have at times seen that the past couple of years. Not the case at all. The Golden Hurricane hung around and made a go of it late. So I guarantee you Lane Kiffin will have found some things to bemoan in that performance. But Jackson Dart looked pretty nice and had a couple of really nice passes for the Rebels.
Anytime you can work Golden Hurricane into a sentence, it feels good. Nice
You're
work.
welcome.
Baylor, Iowa State. I didn't get to see it. I saw how it played out, but any thoughts on that one, Zach?
Yeah, again, you go on the road and win in conference play against a solid Iowa State team, you should feel really good about yourself. I think Baylor is a little bit vulnerable. Like if you can make Blake Shapen, sit in the pocket and pick you apart, I think he's going to struggle. Their running game, they had 2 studs last year in Tristan Ebner and Abram Smith. Those guys are gone. Their running game's not as good as they were last year. But even despite that, they went on the road and won against a good team in conference play. So, that's the type of thing defending champions should do, and they did it. So hats off to them.
Yeah, just to me, the impressive component of the Baylor win is how physical the Bears continue to play. And they won that game at Iowa State because of their physicality.
A lot of props to the guys who picked Baylor in that game. Thank you. Appreciate Let's talk about 2 games in one. Well, Washington beat Stanford. Miami of Ohio beat Northwestern. The only reason I bring them up is who is Stanford? Who is Northwestern? I don't know who these football teams are anymore, and I'm disappointed by that. I used to enjoy cheering for those guys. They're the good guys, right?
Yeah. I mean, does anybody at those institutions care enough to sit down with the respective head coaches and be like, show me the plan for the next 3-5 years. How are we going to get back to where we've been?
And I would contend that, I think we all have tremendous respect for both those coaches, David Shaw and Pat Fitzgerald. But I think this stat's going to blow your mind just a little bit. If I'm not mistaken, in its last 16 games, Northwestern is 4-12. 4-12 in 16 games. They've lost at home now to Duke, which is a much improved team, but you don't expect Northwestern and Pat Fitzgerald to lose to a first-year Duke staff. They follow that up with yesterday's loss. So to me, I feel like the slip has been more precipitous for Northwestern after what the Wildcats were able to do in 2020 versus what they did last year and thus far this year.
Anecdotally, I can tell you, I've seen on the Scoop, I've seen that Stanford is seeking to add numbers to their recruiting department and player personnel. They clearly see they need to be investing, and they're trying to. When will that pay dividends? We'll see, but finally starting to do that. Okay. BYU handled Wyoming, Texas Tech. That was a football game, was that?
Yeah, I mean, hats off to Joey McGuire. Like he laid it all out there. Like he was 6 of 8. He went for 8 fourth downs, got 6 of them, and never really paid for the 2 he didn't get because coming out of the second half went for it in his own territory, didn't get it, down 10, and then his defense gets a 4th down stop of his own, and then went for it the one time at the goal line and didn't get it, and the defense came out and forced a 3 and out and a punt. And Tech ran 100 plays because of his because of his 4th down strategy and great execution by the Tech players on a lot of those 4th downs of Donovan Smith rolling out, finding receivers making great catches. So Tech ran 100 plays, Texas ran 60. And when Texas lost Xavier Worthy, that changed the game. The Texas offense was just in a box and pretty easy to defend at that point. And, really bad game plan by Pete Kukowski and the Texas staff. Like the one thing Tech can't do is throw deep. So let's just keep everyone in front of us and make sure they don't beat us deep. Like it played right into Tech's hands. The Texas defense obviously wore down as the game, as anybody would, playing 100 plays in the heat. You're standing there in the sun, even when you're not in the game. So, yeah, I mean, everybody after that Alabama game, everybody's rushing to anoint this Texas team. And I was just like, let's see how they do in these next 2 games. Like, if they're really them, they'll win these next 2. And they didn't. So, yeah, here we are.
Zach, explain to me how your amazing wife handles a win over Texas.
Oh, my God. It was – so I was following – the game along at my son's 4th grade game, and just about every single person I ran into was a Red Raider or an Aggie or a Sooner who was, had a comment for me here or there. And then you go home, you're getting calls. And, my wife was at our 6th graders game texting me. So, yeah, it was a fun afternoon for me.
Good to be Zach Barnett, right?
It was not. It was definitely not an hour where I questioned every single one of my life choices that led me to this point.
Every single one.
Oh my gosh, I got to share. So my wife is just not a big football person. She's just not. We live in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. She went to Alabama. I'm not kidding though. She's not a big football person at all. About 11 o'clock last night, she turns to me. She goes, "Did Alabama play LSU today?" What in the world would make you think that? And like
the idea that an Alabama LSU game would pass and she would be unaware of it by 11
p.m. bias.
I hope she watches the podcast. I hope she catches this recording. I know she won't because you've said before she's not a big football fan, but I wish she would watch, the 29th minute of this one.
Pittsburgh beat Rhode Island. We're not going to talk about that because we're saving up time to talk about Middle Tennessee just whipping Miami's ass. Come on, Miami. You're the U.
It was absolutely not a fluke. Started following that game pretty closely as soon as we saw MTSU take a 10-0 lead off of a big boy pick six that was just incredible. And then MTSU really controlled that game beginning to end. And the Blue Raiders did have the 98-yard touchdown right after stopping Miami on 4th and goal. And it was really much closer to 99 yards than 98. The ball had cleared the 1-yard line. And so by rule, you have to say that they were taking over at the 2-yard line. And it was just a straight go. And Chase Cunningham, the Knoxville product from Knox Catholic, delivers on the money to his receiver, and he just outran the Miami DB. And I know Miami's not obviously all the way back under Mario Cristobal, but I don't think you expect a Conference USA wide receiver to flat out jet away from a DB from the U. But that's exactly what happened. That was the decisive backbreaker moment. And MTSU eventually went up 45-24 and had full control of the game before settling for a 2-touchdown victory, the program's first ever win against a top 25 team.
Nothing to be taken away from James Madison. James Madison's a really good football team, but James Madison beat the donkey snot out of Middle Tennessee to open the season, something like 44-9 or something like that. But Josh Gaddis's offense couldn't muster anything.
Yeah, but that's a great segue, Scott, to James Madison. I heard from a couple of members of their staff that were appalled that I did not pick them over App State. And App State had control of the game. App State up 28-10 at home, 28-10 at home, and they lost that game 32-28. We'd seen App sort of surviving on some magic last week after the big win at Texas A&M. Magic runs out a little bit, but I also reminded these staffers that I did say on Friday in the podcast, I think James Madison is the new Eastern Seaboard Boise State program, and I fully believe that.
Yeah, great call by you. Like,
I presume
incredible call.
I presume they pointed out that your Scott picked James Madison.
They did actually.
Not. Absolutely. All right, so let's do quick hits on a couple of other games. If I say a couple, I mean a lot. TCU-SMU was TCU's offensive line. And SMU's defense just wasn't there. And TCU, when they needed to run the ball, they just ran the ball.
Yeah, I mean, it was just I think TCU just had a different class of athletes at the skill position than SMU can defend. And if you're SMU, you got your biggest home game ever, and the game starts and the stands are like 50% full. They don't fill up for the second quarter. And Sonny Dykes is probably sitting up there leading 14-0, looking at the stands like, yeah, this is why I left.
I tried to explain the Auburn win to somebody last night. I was like, Missouri's going in overtime. They're going to win the game. The guy fumbles before he crosses the goal line. What? Come on, man. That was just a come on, man, the whole game.
Yeah, it was. That was I think I got the text during that game that it was setting back football decades. And I would be hard pressed to disagree with said text. So
yeah, I mean, it was two teams struggling, yearning to get 6 wins is what that game was.
It was not good. Kansas was good, real good.
Yeah, unironically good. Like defending their offense does not look like fun. Like I'm not going to get ahead of myself and say that they're going to go out and win the Big 12 or anything like that. Like the Big 12 is a really tough league, but at this point, they're 4-0, and I think it's safe to say they're going to get 2 more. And they're going to go to a bowl game, and Lance Leipold and that staff should be in the running for any sort of Coach of the Year stuff. Because, I mean, that program looks so full of life after being so dead for so long. Like, that's great to see as much as the wins. It's just how much fun everyone's having at a KU game.
There have been some really bad hires over the last decade. Les Miles was
that was one you and I were like, what?
It just never made sense. I mean, from day one, like, guys, this is not a good idea.
No,
but with that being said, Les Miles is who got Jalen Daniels to Kansas. And this is my shameless plug for my buddy Steve, who he and his wife, even though they live in South Bend, they have Kansas basketball season tickets. Now they're all aboard the Jayhawk football train. They're huge Lance Leipold everything about Lance. And he called it 2 weeks ago. He said, I'm telling you, Jalen can be a Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, and he absolutely looks like it after yesterday's win against Duke.
Should we talk about Colorado's ineptitude?
No, that's just I think another one of those Power 5 jobs that will open sooner rather than later. We've already seen a couple of somewhat surprising openings early this season, and that's another one that's just inevitably going to have to come open because it's an abject disaster.
So we picked our games right before we did our podcast Thursday. I picked North Carolina to beat Notre Dame, and I then learned via Zach Barnett on our podcast that never happens, once in the last 20 or something like that. So I wish I had listened to Zach Barnett prior to registering my picks.
But I think you had a lot of company in your pick of UNC. As a matter of fact, I think only one person on this screen or on that panel picked the Fighting Irish. But anyway,
not listen to Zach Barnett. Me.
Maybe we should get your wife on the podcast.
All right. I told everybody, watch out for the Fighting PJ Flex. They were going to do to Michigan State what they did, and they did. I'm telling you, man, that team.
That's another team that's gotten by on a really soft non-conference schedule that includes Colorado. But unlike a Michigan, unlike an Oklahoma, they went out there and showed that their really good play translates to conference play. I think the yardage was like 500 to 240, something like that. I mean, this was not a 34-7 final score that played like a 34-7 game. And at this point, if you're a Minnesota fan, I'd say start booking your tickets for Indianapolis, because there's no one in that division that can hang with you like that. I've got them at number 15 in my ballot this week, and they weren't even in anybody's top 25 last week. But they've been one of the 15 best teams in college football so far this season.
Let me ask you guys this: Mel Tucker gets the big contract, and then a season like this unfolds. Does that make him press even more? Does that make him more likely to make changes? Or is he like, no, we got a plan, we got a program, we're sticking with it?
No, I think it has to make him press more, and I think we've all talked about it in various forums, be it our Slack channel or be it on the podcast or phone calls or whatever. The pressure is such now in college football, especially when you get a ginormous contract like that you cannot help but press, and you cannot help but feel that pressure in this situation. And it's obviously a disappointing start for Sparty after the breakthrough season that they had a year ago. And I don't think anybody expected them to be as good this year as they were a year ago. It was such a special season. But they look rough right now. They look really rough on both sides of the ball in a lot of cases. And so I absolutely think it puts pressure. It should put pressure. If you have a nearly $100 million deal, you absolutely should and will feel pressure.
All right, we're 38 minutes in. I'm going to put a 10-second buzzer on you. I'm sure I can buzz you somehow, some way. Good talk. Colorado State is bad. Sacramento State Donkey Konged them. That doesn't bode well for the state of Colorado the rest of the season. Georgia Tech lost, and I think change is coming there. JB, you want to interject anything there or no?
Yeah, I think that based on several conversations I had late last week, it was made clear to that group that it was a must-win game at UCF. They obviously did not win, did not play particularly well. Unfortunately, that's another Power 5 job that opens much sooner than later.
Cincinnati got a good win versus Indiana.
Yeah, I said Indiana was a hollow, undefeated team, and Cincinnati deserves a lot of credit for what it's doing despite all it lost a year ago.
Western Kentucky was nice only to win 73-0 against Florida International. Memphis took care of North Texas. Cal beat Arizona by about 20, 18.
Yeah, I saw it was the first time in a long time that Cal had scored 40 points in a Pac-12 game.
Yeah,
I don't have the number in front of me, but good for them.
I was on the field last week, pregame, late game, as Cal played Notre Dame. They got some dudes, man, and they're obviously super well coached with Justin Wilcox and Peter Sermon, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. I still think Cal can do some things and play, if nothing else, the role of spoiler for a couple of the higher-ranked Pac-12 teams this season.
Rice and Houston, a little inner-city squad game, and Houston won. Wasn't easy. Dana wasn't happy about it.
Yeah. Dana sounds about ready to quit. I mean, I just don't think that's working out the way anybody wanted it to. They won, but they're playing, so far below expectations. A lot of people had them pegged for a New Year's Six bowl berth, and they don't even look like they're going to make the AAC championship game at this point. Like, they just look very average.
Iowa scored 27 points.
Iowa's defense scored 14 of them.
There you go.
Yep.
That's how you hit the over. Utah State is just not good this year. And I don't know enough to speak as to why that is, but they're just not. Big win for John Sumrall at home, beating Marshall 16-7. Good for them. Kane Womack's team, South Alabama, is good, like real good. Kane's a name to watch in the coming years. LSU do what they're supposed to do against New Mexico. South Carolina got a win versus Charlotte. Purdue got a win. Good. Boys. Louisiana Monroe beat the team that wants to just be called Louisiana.
That's 2 losses in a row, I think, for the Cajuns, and not necessarily losses that you would have remotely expected that program to absorb just months after Billy Napier's departure.
Yeah.
A head shake is sufficient, Scott.
Okay, that's the Football Scoop Podcast, Week 4 recap. God bless college football. It is such a glorious sport. I say we do this again next weekend.
Sounds good. I agree.
I think we should probably record one before then, but yes, we'll meet you back here next Sunday as well.
Everybody have a great Sunday. Thanks for your time. Football Scoop Podcast.